it's all about the friends you make and how self-motivated you are to learn in that environment. Because I don't think, for the most part, I don't think the teachers are going to really teach you that much, and you just kind of have to use the resources at the school to take advantage of whatever facilities they have there, and then also take advantage of the fact that you've got friends around you who are also interested in the same thing you are. And that's sort of what school is for. You might get lucky and have a teacher that really inspires you. But I've never had that. I've been more inspired by some of my teacher assistants than my actual professors. And I think, oh, thanks. I think I've sought out in my life, like, whatever I wanted to learn, I just figured I found like who was inspiring to me, and if they had written any books on the subject or anything like that, and I tried to learn from them. I have some friends who went to SVA in Manhattan, and they all were like super influenced by this one figure drawing instructor. Like a bunch of people, like Tom Herbick, James Jean, Dash Shaw, a bunch of people, Tomer Hanukkah, I think, were super influenced by this teacher named James McMullen. And so I heard about James, and then I just bought his book about figure drawing, and kind of like learned his philosophy on anatomy. And I tried to pick up whatever I could from that book on like how to approach drawing the human body. But I'm sure if I was in his class, I would have really absorbed a lot more than I did from his book, you know? But I didn't go to SVA, so what can you do? And he's retired now, so what can you do? But that's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Like, I never really hear about... it's really rare that I hear about teachers that have, like, changed people's lives in the art... in art school. I will say my high school art teacher... I had a couple high school art teachers that really encouraged me. One in middle school and one in 9th grade, who made me feel confident about how much time I was putting into painting and stuff, and that it was like a worthwhile pursuit. And they were just like chill, really encouraging people. And then I had an art teacher in high school after 9th grade who I really didn't get along with too well. And she taught me a lot of like fundamental stuff, like doing color charts and stuff, doing color grids and all this kind of stuff, doing still life, doing gestural drawings and stuff. And at that time, I just wanted to draw. I just wanted to make basically like R. Crumb comics. And I didn't understand where she was coming from, but years later I realized how much she had instilled this like foundational understanding of color theory and stuff in me. And I went to her, I went back to Pennsylvania to go to her retirement, and like talk to her about how much she influenced me. So that was high school. That was probably my biggest influence was a teacher, my high school art teacher who I didn't we didn't get along. And in fact, she wrote a like sort of condescending letter of recommendation to the art school I applied to. And she didn't remember doing that. She was like, "I would never do that." And I was like, "You did. You definitely did." I read the letter. But I was like in high school, I was like an angry, pretty angry, contrarian, kind of really disrespectful to adults and anyone like who was like in a authority position. I just like had complete disdain for anyone like that, so I didn't want to be listening to any teachers at that time, so I don't blame her. I don't think some people. I don't know. It's weird because when you're growing up, when you're in your teens, when you're in your mid to late teens, all you want to do is like establish your identity. You establish, get a foothold on your ego and like self-worth, and it's hard to hear an adult tell you that you should start from scratch and relearn everything you've been trying to do in drawing on your own, teaching yourself. And some old hippie guy in art school is going to tell me like that I need to stop focusing on figurative art, and I'm like, get out of my face, man, you fucking hippie. And then when you get older, you're like when the desperation for self-respect kind of like dies down a little bit, I think it's easier to learn from someone else. At least in my in my experience as being a student, I didn't want to really learn from anybody. I mean, even now, I mean, yeah, I resist like learning things from certain. I don't know. I guess I'm just like a kind of like
Money for
controlling,
nothing, but
stubborn person. Well, I would say Frank Zappa and Sun Ra are probably two of the most hardworking musicians that ever lived. The output of both of those guys was off the charts. Structure, okay. I mean, Zappa was all about structure. That guy was the most hard ass structural discipline. So disciplined that he would fire. He would always complain about the people in his band wanting to replace them with computers. And Sun Ra wouldn't let the people in his band leave the house. He would keep them basically hostage. Wouldn't let them do drugs. Wouldn't let them date, like have relationships. They just had to be in the basement rehearsing all day, all night. Similar to also Captain Beefheart was similar, except that Captain Beefheart, Don Vliet, apparently himself was not very disciplined. but he made everybody else just like live and breathe music in his house. Sun Ra was like my main inspiration for like kind of like becoming more disciplined in my life, actually. Even though his music is just like a splatterhouse, you know. Getting there. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Some people think like there's a lot of talk about work-life balance and stuff these days, and like self-care and touch grass and all that kind of stuff. And I always wonder, like, who's actually ripping it and actually like prioritizes self-care. I can't think of anybody. You gotta run yourself into the ground. Just like hang on to the bottom of your gas tank for as long as you can. And be able to cruise at like extreme burnout. Just cruise. And then like have a heart attack at age whatever, 55. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, because every time anyone I don't know, anytime I've ever been given an opportunity to do something that I think is worthwhile, and will change my life in some way, that usually comes with having to sacrifice my health on some level. And you kind of just live for it. And I think a lot of athletes think that way, you know, like Olympic athletes and stuff. It's just like running your body as hard as it can go for as long as you can last. My side hustle is comics, I guess. So my Patreon is a side hustle. You could say Patreon during the lockdown pandemic. My Patreon completely saved my ass. Like, there were no jobs happening. No one was reaching out to me for employment. And that was about a year and a half of almost zero offers. And my Patreon, just like, it didn't pay my whole rent, but it reduced my rent by like probably like 3/4. So my bank account just was able to not completely hemorrhage for like a year and a half. So yeah, I think that like my Patreon was pretty essential for me. At the same time, because I was making money from Patreon. I couldn't apply for any of the like assistance stuff that was happening during the pandemic. So it was basically, you could get like 1,000 a month from government assistance during that time, but because I was making like 800 a month on my Patreon, I couldn't apply for any government assistance. I think, anyway, that was how I interpreted it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed out on a bunch of government assistance. Yeah, I know my brother was getting checks. And after I quit Adventure Time, I had about a 3-year burnout recovery from working on Adventure Time. But I did take little jobs during that time. I worked a little bit on Summer Camp Island. And I did little bits of like consulting work and stuff here and there. And I did a little bit of... What else did I do during that time? I don't know. There was just a big period of time where I was relying pretty heavily on my Patreon because I was so burnt out from Adventure Time. I couldn't deal with doing another storyboarding gig. It took me a long time to be able to... And even to this day, kind of storyboarding is the last thing I want to do. I'll still do it, but I can still feel the ghost. I can still feel the ghost of how much I put into Adventure Time hanging over me. So I'd rather do things like visual development and like directing and like writing scripts than actually storyboarding at this point. But that's for other people because I love storyboarding for myself. If I'm making little shorts and stuff like that, like it just in my free time on Storyboard Pro, just messing around and making little scenes. I like doing that, and it can become a like really meditative and fun thing. But doing it for other people means you're held accountable for a lot of technical problem solving, and you can create a lot of problems if you're not on top of it. So from a technical standpoint, there's a lot of pressure in storyboarding for a production, and it becomes this like mouse chase of like identifying problems, and it's not as fun as just sitting in your studio and making up fun shit. You're being held accountable basically for someone else's money and, you know, budget, and wanting to be like produce something, especially if it's board driven. You're trying to produce something that's like gonna justify its existence on television or wherever it airs, and if it's board driven, that's a huge amount of pressure. Is what having to do with storytelling. Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're working on a storyboard driven show and you're a storyboarder, you have to have like you kind of have to turn off any sort of insecurities and just believe that you're the shit basically, and that any idea you come up with is going to be funny, and and you just have to kind of be somewhat delusional, somewhat egotistical, I guess. Yeah, if you question yourself, I knew people that really spiraled out storyboarding and would get in their own heads about and feel so much pressure that they would get paralyzed, you know, and yeah. Like maybe my sensibilities don't work for this thing I'm whoever's running the show, you know, like our ideas about what's funny and stuff don't match. I think that happens a lot. I've seen storyboarders who really struggle on one show really thrive on a different show. And that makes me think about a lot about like running teams and stuff. I always think about how do you run a really really positive team where everyone is like encouraged and feels confident in their ability and like why they were hired, and they don't question, you know, they don't feel so much pressure to deliver that they can't believe in their own talent. And how do you foster that kind of environment for everyone. And I don't know. I've never, I've only been in charge a few times of like, whatever, some department, and I felt like I was really successful in some ways, and then really unsuccessful in other ways. And as far as like team morale, yeah, I mean everyone's different, right? Everyone responds to different styles of encouragement, and being sensitive to that is especially if you're like me, where sometimes if someone is going through problems, like having a difficult time, I don't know, sometimes I just don't I don't feel like I'm equipped with how to encourage them, how to get them out of that spiral, or convince them that they have what it takes, I don't know. Maybe that's something you have to learn. Like you have to go to like school for, like go to like some weekend retreat leadership program or something. How to like really. I've had some coaches who are really good at that kind of thing. Really good at like positive reinforcement, finding the ways in which you like to be communicated to, And I think that takes a really special sort of. I don't know if that's like something you're born with, something you really like force yourself to learn. I have no idea. But whatever that is, sometimes I don't think I have that quality in me. And I'm just like trying to be like, chill, bro. Yo, it's all good. We're all friends, or whatever. Everything's chill. And maybe that's not what they need to hear. Like the sort of avoiding conflict, sort of, I don't know. It kind of made me never want to be an art director again, in some ways. I'm trying not to eat after 6 right now, and I'm so hungry right now. Yeah, the bananas on walls thing. I was listening to someone actually recently talking about the banana on walls thing. And the somehow I think I remember like relating to the sort of like US CIA backed propaganda about American individualism and abstract art. in the 60s. Thanks, J.K. Spa. Yeah, I watched some video recently about during the Cold War, the art that was coming out of the Soviet Union was all propaganda art. It had to be approved by the Ministry of Art, I guess, or whatever it was. Like, it had to have some sort of social value, um, and be contributing to like the collectivist like ideology. And so that's why you have all this like these archives of animation and stuff coming out of that region and that time, that all we're trying to find ways to still be creative while still pushing um, the party agenda stuff. And America's answer to that at the time was like, okay, you got guys like Jackson Pollock who are making non-figurative splatter, stuff where people look at it and they're like, my kid could do that kind of stuff. And then they decided that that would be the main American cultural export to the rest of the world, being like, our art is non-ideological. It's art for art's sake. It's pure individualism. This is the sort of freedom you get by buying into capitalism, buying into the American dream. And so they funded a bunch of those abstract artists at the time. And there was a really, really popular showcase that went around the world, and to show off like what Americans were capable of creatively. And then that got shut down by conservatives because they were like, why are you spending our tax money on bullshit shit that my kids can do or whatever. I think that was their take on it. But what they didn't realize, maybe they didn't get the memo, but they didn't realize that they were actually like going against this like psyop of like capitalist psyop that was like being spread around the world, and unintentionally undermined the program. But the effects of it are still reverberating in art schools to this day. At least last time I checked, which was a long time ago. So maybe things have changed. Maybe lowbrow commercial art is cool in art school again. But I wouldn't know. I don't really have an opinion on Banksy. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what. I can't. It's like it's too contemporary, I guess. It's like commenting on like contemporary. It's topical. I think anything that's like overly topical doesn't really interest me that much. I'm like, what's this stuff going to mean in 30 years? I don't know. I don't think it's going to mean that much. Like that guy Beeple or whatever, I'm like, I don't get what this is. Shit is not going to be in 30 years, like no one's gonna care about this. It's in the same way like you can't really listen to stand-up comedy from 20 years ago, because they're all commenting on current topics. So it's good for the time. I think it's like fine for the time. Just I'm not trying to make, like, I don't want to say it's bad or whatever. It's not. It's a certain type of thing that is of the moment, and maybe it's good that there needs to be people making art that's of the moment. But it's just not what I'm super interested in. I think Eddie Murphy. I think so. I'm old enough to have seen Eddie Murphy when in the '80s, like the Raw. And I think when that came out, it was like so vibrant and so capturing like a vibe of that moment. And I think you can still watch it to this day and get some of that feeling, but you kind of had to be there to really get it. I don't think it's... I think he was so hip also that it's hard for him not to be dated in that moment. Not that some of it can't carry significance like now. You can probably still watch it and still laugh, but I don't think it's going to hit as hard as it did when it came out. Toriyama was not an influence on me. I didn't really appreciate him until way later. And probably not until a couple of years ago, where I really paid attention to his design. So I really like him, and I think he's an amazing, has an amazing design sensibility and is iconic, and but he didn't influence me. I missed the boat on Toriyama. But I can appreciate it now. Have I seen Blue Eye Samurai? Yeah, my parents came to visit. My parents came to visit a couple weeks ago, and they were watching Blue Eye Samurai, so they watched it at my house. I probably watched 3 episodes with them, and I think it's too serious. I think it takes itself too seriously, and I don't think it's... I love grim samurai stuff, and I think that it was glacial and boring and humorless. That's what I thought of it. Don't quote me on that. I think I've talked with. This is something that I bring up with my therapist and stuff like that, and I'm still working it out about like why I'm obsessed with like vitality, and I really, and to me, vitality expresses itself humor, through humor and violence and the sublime, and and through depravity, and I think you can find all those sorts of elements, those sorts of themes in samurai films, and in the scenes in that show where they were trying to depict depravity, they tiptoed around it. And in the scenes where they tried to depict humor, they tiptoed around it. And the only thing that they seemed to relish in was violence, in terms of like how I view vitality, human dismemberment, and that kind of thing. And but almost there was this it wasn't celebrated. And I think that, to me, a show that really inspires me celebrates, if it's a violent topic, if it's a violent subject, the violence is celebrated as almost celebrating life. So violence to me celebrates life. That's why it needs to have an element of humor to it. Maybe. I'm still trying to figure out this in my own mind. Like, I'm like, why? What is this thing about vitality that I'm so preoccupied with? And that's why I love like Evil Dead. I love Evil Dead. Evil Dead celebrates humanity in a way that Blue Eye Samurai can't. Do I diet and exercise? I am currently dieting and exercising a lot. I'm trying to get back in shape. I kind of like fell off the wagon over the past couple years. So I'm really going for it right now, trying to get ripped. But I'm only about 4 weeks into actually taking exercise and diet seriously again. Yeah, Evil Dead 2, that's the one. Evil Dead 2 is the one that like really, to me, celebrated like the survival drive, the will to live, and the will to the what do you call it, the preciousness of life, and also the absurdity of life. And also contending with elements, contending with a reality beyond what we should be expected to handle, you know. So all those things, you put them together, and you get this roller coaster entertainment ride of emotions and affirmation of life. And I don't get that from, and not every story needs to do that either. Like, I think for some people, Blue Eye Samurai was like this great show, and my parents loved it. So I'm just like really particular about why I watch stuff, I guess. I'm like, there's certain reasons why I want to see something, and why I would remember something I watched. And that show just did not have that for me. But for other people, it was great. I mean, my manager loved it. He was like, "Have you checked out Blue Eyed Samurai? It's great." And I was like, I did check it out. Big animation recommendation right now. I mean, the last great animated thing I saw was Boy and the Heron. That was Chef's Kiss. Masterpiece. Yeah, I wanna get good at Blender also. Old Boy. I saw Old Boy in the theater. I'm gonna say Old Boy has one of the most iconic fight scenes in any film. At the time that I saw it, I thought it was like overly melodramatic. I thought the ending didn't do it for me, but I loved everything leading up. Everything leading up to that hallway fight scene was great, and then to me after that it was kind of like downhill after that. But the setup and all the way up until that hallway fight scene, I mean, that scene is iconic, and undisputed. Undisputed? Undisputable? I've lost track of the Evangelion movies. I think I saw 2 of them. I don't know what's going on with that. I kind of lost interest, to be honest. I think like how long are you gonna rework your story, man? Like how many times are you gonna? Is it the only thing you can do? Like, are you? Is it the only way that they'll give you money to make something? Is just to keep remaking Evangelion and keep tweaking it to your like keep refining it? I don't know. Like, why are you doing that? The original series was already a masterpiece. Just like do something else. Do I think mentorship is important? I think it can be. Yeah, I think it can be really important. And I don't think you have to find a mentor in an official, in any sort of official program or anything like that. It could just be someone you hang out with. It could just be like someone who's a little bit further along a career path that you want to go down, like that you've gotten to know. I feel like in my life, I've gotten a lot of advice from Dash Shaw and Tom Herpick back when we were all just making comics. And they weren't my teachers or anything, but they just like might have they got publishing deals before I did, and I just would ask them questions all the time and that kind of thing. So just finding, I don't know where you find mentors now. I mean, I tried doing a mentorship program 2 years ago. And it didn't, it turned into like a little bit of I wouldn't say disaster, but it didn't work out the way I hoped it would. And it kind of, the plan kind of fell through. Basically, the kid that we picked to mentor didn't finish his work. I didn't know how to tell him to get his act together. Yeah, I think Ghost Shrimp has a great thing going on. I think his mentorship program and his like camp and stuff seems like he's really dialed in. Teaching kids like how to do stuff in the industry they want to get into. Hey, Jono, do you want to meet up, man? I'm around. Do you want to jump on a call? I'm just sitting here painting comics. Jonah helps me project manage Jesus too. I can finish now. I've been live streaming for a while, for like over an hour. Yeah, let's jump on a call, man. All right, so I didn't finish the page, but I got pretty far. I'll try finishing it tomorrow if I can. This part's gonna take me for